welcome to the Honest Property Podcast. We're your hosts, Becky and Ruth, and today we have a very special guest. We've got Athena Dobson, the host of the Girls in Property Podcast.
Yay!
Hi, ladies.
So we've turned the tables because the other week we were on Athena's podcast. So now Athena's our special guest. Athena's the host of a podcast that really made us feel like we weren't alone for the very first time as a woman in the property space. So we are eternally grateful to Athena for
starting that podcast
and introducing us to a whole world full of people that we never realized existed for like a decade. So if you are interested in following the Honest Girls in Property podcast, I'm just so glad there's more women podcasts in property now. Check them out. But in this particular episode, we're going to just get to know Athena a lot better. She creates the platform for everybody to raise their voice, but we would love to hear more about Athena's own voice, her own experiences in property. So thanks for coming on the podcast, Athena.
Oh, thank you, ladies. Thank you so much. And thank you for such a fab intro. This is nice. I get to be a guest and I don't know whether it's more relaxing or more stressful to be the guest. I'm not sure yet. So...
It's just a chill chat. It's so good.
No, I love it. And I love your podcast as well. And I love the name of it, Honest Proper Tea, because I'm a massive tea drinker. And I just love what you girls stand for as well. And I love the fact you're sisters and everything and really boosting the women in this industry. So yay to you guys.
Oh, nice. I was just saying how we should call it Honest Proper Coffee because I always have coffee instead of tea.
Love it.
But let's take it back to where it all began for Athena. So you
started in the travel industry. So what made you? So just tell us from the travel industry into property. So how did that come about?
Yeah. So actually, I'm going to go one further back if that's okay, because then I'll explain all of that. So my background is effectively marketing communications and business studies. So marketing, sales, that type of thing. So the first ever job that I got out of university when coming out, getting a first class degree from Bournemouth doing marketing, was I went and worked, believe it or not, for a forensic accounting firm. Which, by the way, is the most boring thing in the entire world. But it was a high flying space to be in. It was Liverpool Street in central London. It was great. And what you'll know about a forensic accounting firm is it's extremely male dominated. Instantly, it's male dominated. So my job and role before all of this came about, with everything I do now, was to encourage women within the forensic accounting world and to build networking events and marketing events for the women. So it's really interesting, actually. So I put on all of these different events and shows and everything like that. And I did it for about a year, but realized that there was so much more to life than, going on the tube for an hour every single morning in rush hour.
Wow.
By the way, it takes the same amount of time to go across London on the tube than it does to go to Spain or something. It's like a time warp, that tube. It really is. Anyway, so I was on the tube and I was like, there must be more to life. And so I was with a person at the time, and I remember the conversation we had was, look, we've got some money saved up. Should we go and buy a house together, or shall we go traveling together? And both of us instantly said, let's go traveling together. So me and him literally went around the world for a year, which was one of the best things I've ever done. We went to Southeast Asia, South America, Australasia, everywhere. And I fell in love with travel, and travel is in my blood. Like, that's how my parents met. They were travel reps. Like, it's always been in my blood.
Oh, that's cute.
So we were traveling around the world, and then we obviously came back, and I thought, right, what is it that I want to do? And I thought, I love travel. Let me go get a job in the travel industry so I can just talk holidays all day. Yes, discount. Oh, listen, the discounts were great. I'm not going to lie. And I did that for 7 years, and I worked my way up through that corporation, and that was a very sales dominated job. So you were constantly on target. It was a commission based job with a bit of a basic salary, but you were always pit up against each other, if that makes sense. So there was always a chart and everything like that. And I was quite fortunate that I was always quite high up on that sales chart. And so I got to go on lots of amazing trips because they always took the top 5 sellers around the world. And, I've been to some amazing places with the directors and CEOs and everything like that. So it was great. And for a long, long time, I was living the most amazing life with lots of money, and it was wonderful. So that was great. However, and actually through that, I should just say through that, what I actually did was, because of my personality, I don't know about you girls, I've never been one to go and buy shoes and handbags and designer clothes. It's just not me. I'm more of I buy memories instead of buying things. That's just my personality. And so, yes, I would buy expensive holidays. I would do that. But at the same time, I started to think about, okay, I've got all this money in savings. How can I invest this now? So while I was in that job, what actually happened was I separated from my partner at the time, who I went traveling with. And I thought, right, I've now got this house that I own. We can't sell it. So the agent said to me, why don't you rent it out instead? And I knew nothing about renting it out, like nothing whatsoever. So I became what is known as an accidental landlord who just learn as I went. Literally, I was like, okay, I think I get this. I think, we rent it out, you pay a management fee, etc. And actually, the first tenant I ever had, which moved into that property, was a nightmare tenant, like a nightmare tenant, one of the worst tenants I've ever had. And you'll hear on the podcast, I talk about the stories about when I got a call from the neighbor, and the neighbor said to me, Athena, I can't go into my garden because of the smell coming from your house. And then I found out they had 3 Rottweilers living in the house who were like basically pissing and shitting in the garden. And yeah, there was lots of issues, and then they wouldn't leave the house when they had to get evicted. And it's a whole story that you could go listen to on the Girls and Property podcast. But it was a real eye-opening experience, let's say.
And it didn't put you off.
And it didn't put you off.
Well, no, it didn't. No. So that was just one. And then, so anyway, so that happened. So I was in this full-time job, and I had this accidental rental property because I couldn't sell it. And the reason I couldn't sell it, by the way, is because COVID then hit at that time. Yeah. So COVID was around, and just everything just stopped effectively. And more than that, my job became, what's the word? Well, it ceased to exist, my job. Like literally overnight, I remember sitting, and I talk about the story actually, I remember it to this day. I was sitting on the couch, Boris Johnson was on my screen, and he said the whole stay at home. Don't go to work, stay at home. And I remember the next morning receiving an email to say, you're furloughed till further notice. And it was a commission-based job, girls. It's commission-based. Yeah. So you're like, oh my God, like now what? And I remember with my head was in my hands thinking, oh my God, my life literally flipped overnight from going on these amazing trips, amazing holidays, earning loads of money, to what am I now going to do type thing. And it was really scary, really, really, really scary. And so I remember everyone, I'm sure, went through the same thing where we have, let's say, a week to 2 weeks of feeling really sorry for yourself and just plowing through Netflix and Disney and marathon watching all of those things. I definitely did that. Lots of ice cream, lots of all of that, and not really knowing what the hell was going on, because the whole world was going through it, and you were like, oh my God, this is serious, this is real. And also, quite frankly, quite scary, because you were seeing the death tolls and everything like that. It was a really difficult time for everybody. And so as I was doom scrolling through Facebook one day, this post popped up on Facebook, which was from a property education company that said £99 for a 2-day online workshop to learn about property. And I remember thinking to myself, well, I've already got this property, this buy-to-let, which accidentally came towards me. Why don't I go learn more about property? Maybe I could do some investing. Maybe I could make some money that way. Not really knowing anything about it, but I thought, sounds like something I might be able to do. So I went to this online. I remember sitting in the lounge, my little headset on. Steve was like, what the hell are you doing? And I was like, I'm learning about property. I don't know what else to do. And he was like, okay. And I learned about this, and I learned about setting up a limited company. I learned all of the basics about how you can make money through property. And me being me in true traditional fashion went, I could do that. And then she went, I could do that. Because that's just my attitude to life. And so what literally happened from there, and don't ask, like, and the thing is I always try and skip this chapter. And I remember when I did the podcast with Steve actually went, don't skip this chapter, Athena, because it's important to explain that it didn't just go that I went to a 2-day course and the next day I did what I did. I then listened to endless podcasts. I read endless books. I did endless research. It became my new obsession, effectively, because I was locked in. I had nothing else to do. And I learned all about how to do a buy, refurbish, rent, refinance. That's what I learned about in a buy to let. And I thought, right, for my first ever one that I take on, because why not? I'm going to set up a limited company. Never set up a company in my life, but I'm going to do that. So I set up a limited company. I then said, right, I need to take on, because it's all I could afford because of the amount of money I had, 25%. I was like, I can afford a flat. So I couldn't afford a house, but I knew I could afford a flat. So I said, right, I need to start looking for flats. However, because it's a flat and I wanted to do a refurb on it to refinance, I was like, well, it has to be a freehold flat. It can't be a leasehold one, because on a leasehold, you need the permissions from the freeholder. So I remember calling the agents and saying to the agents, and this was a time when they were back in and everything like that. I said, right, I need you to find me a freehold flat. And they were like, Athena, that's like finding a needle in a haystack. And I said, that's fine. Call me when you have one. And so months went on and nobody was calling me. And then one day I actually spoke to one of my friends and she said, my dad's got a flat that he's selling. And I went, really? Or no, my dad knows someone who's got a flat that is selling. And I said, that's interesting. And then I spoke to her and it was a freehold. Yeah. I thought, well, this is interesting. So I bought it. I bought this freehold flat, and the idea was to turn it from a 1-bed to a 3-bed with an extension and then refinance and do it that way. So I then had to learn all about gaining planning permission, because it was going to go further than permitted development rights. That was interesting, by the way, because during COVID, planning was a nightmare.
Yeah, I remember that.
It took, I think, about 9 months to go through planning. It was ridiculous. Like, it was unnecessary. The building costs were through the roof. Like, everything was just like, oh my God, this is insane. Really, but silly expensive, like really silly. And also some of the labourers hadn't gone back yet. So there was a real supply and demand issue there as well. So I had to learn really, really quickly about how to go through all of this in quite a difficult situation. But yeah, it did happen and it was really good and it went well. And I've still got that one to this day. And then it kind of just snowballed from there. So I ended up with 2. So I effectively had 2 buy-to-lets at that point. But I felt like it was very slow. I felt like, well, now I've got another 25% deposit in this. I now don't have enough really to go and do the next one. Yes, you pulled out a bit of money, but because of the market at the time, it wasn't as much. And so I thought, well, I don't have enough to go again. Yeah. And I didn't really understand about investors at this time. I thought, well, this is how you build, right? This is what you're taught. You buy.
And were you at a point where you also wanted to get out of your existing job?
Exactly. Exactly. So at this point, I was going back short term because they were starting to reintroduce people back, but they didn't need us all back because obviously the travel industry was still very much closed.
Yeah.
But what was the issue is at that time, it was a really interesting one when you think about what the company did to us, actually, because we still were returned on our basic salary, but we were returned to deal with all of the issues about trying to get everybody home and trying to get everybody like repatriated and all of these things. So we weren't earning commission. We were only earning a basic salary, but we had to return to work with no commission, effectively. Yeah. We weren't making sales. We were dealing with issues. So I became a very good problem solver, really good. And actually, it's insane if you think about what that company made us do, but that's for another day. And so, yes, so I realized I had to leave this job. Exactly. So in realizing I had to leave this job, I then thought, how can I do this quicker? And the trick is, what you've got to do is you've got to start surrounding yourself with other people doing this. Property is a really lonely game, as I'm sure you girls know.
Oh, yeah.
Right? Really lonely. And when you don't have somebody else there to bounce off of and to think of ideas, you don't know what's out there. So I started to hang around with a couple of girls and we started meeting up in my area and it was so wonderful. And it just gave me that real boost that I needed. And they started talking about a rent-to-rent strategy. And I started to see that she was doing really well in Southampton doing her rent-to-rent strategy. And I thought, oh, I could do that. This whole thing started again. I could do that. And so rent-to-rent effectively was born from there, which I'm sure you've got lots of questions about. But that's that's how it started up until now. So sorry that was long, but that's the process.
Yeah, I think it's important to say all of that.
I was going to say it's actually so relatable. I did tourism as a degree, geography with tourism. So I feel like I could have so easily gotten into a similar job as what you did, because travel is such a
part of our
life, such a joy. I remember my partner saying, I was really happy that we were together because that you were such a low maintenance person, you didn't need all the fancy handbags and stuff. And then I realized that the flights were really expensive.
yeah
that's my thing.
I love that.
So I can totally relate to that, as well as I'm amazed that I'm just so in awe that you took it all on. Were you with anybody? Were you doing it all by yourself? You're probably at the very beginning.
All by myself. Wow. All on my own.
Wow. So at least Ruth and I had each other.
Yeah, well, we're quite tunnel focused when we need to be. So I feel like we're quite similar.
Yeah,
really.
But without any community, that's really
hard,
difficult.
And more than that, actually, it's more than that. So I was on my own doing it. Nobody in my family had ever done it before. Like, sometimes you hear about these women and men who go, my dad was in the industry. My dad's a builder. My mum's a builder, whatever it may be. There's always like sometimes that link. I had zero link to this, zero link to property education, anything like that. And so what was really interesting is when I decided to do all of this, people were almost looking at me like, oh, like, because they hadn't done it before. They were like, they were saying to me, you could lose everything. This is a really bad idea. So not only was I on my own, I was also having to fight other people on my own who didn't really get it. And quite frankly, because I hadn't done it before, it was really easy to listen to them going, oh, maybe this is a bad idea, because I had nothing to relate it to that I had already done before. And so that was tough. That was a really, really tough time, dealing with COVID, dealing with setbacks, dealing with people saying you shouldn't be doing this. And my simple response to them was, well, what else should I do? I can't, like, my job, my industry is dead. Like dead in the water. Like, what do you think I should be doing? And they're like, well, go do marketing. I'm like, I don't want to do marketing. It's subjective. I want to go make money. That's what I want to do. And quite frankly, during COVID, I was watching it happen around me. The first, everyone started to tunnel down their companies and get rid of divisions and make redundancies. The first thing to always go is marketing. So first thing to always go. And that's such a silly thing, because marketing is actually what powers the businesses. But
that's really interesting.
Wow. So it's like it's I feel like for a lot of us, including Ruth and I, we had our day-to-day business, and then our properties were sort of in the background, and then COVID hit and made everybody disabled, basically, financially, with it being able to go out and make money. It was then we also realized, like you did, that it was property that was the only thing that was going to keep earning us income through rental income.
Yeah, we still were making money from people needing to live somewhere, and that was that's
never going to go away. That is a market that will forever exist and forever be in demand. And I think for us as well, that was the turning point when we were like, okay, if we can't, because we had a pet care business, a dog walking business, if we can't literally go out there and pick up people's dogs and take them for a walk or visit a cat, then maybe we should be putting more of our energy and focus into the thing that's actually going to keep us secure if this was to ever happen again. And that was when we took our property business a lot more seriously as opposed to just letting it sit. I mean, it's great that it can just sit in the back and prop you up, but we just wanted to grow it enough so that it was going to be something that would more than cover like everything that's required to survive and enjoy like a lifestyle, even if the world was to shut down again.
Yeah. And I love the fact you did it together as well. I love the fact you went on this journey together and hoisted each other up in it, because it's so important when you're starting out to have that community, have that support. And that's what we're really seeing now with all of the girls, within this world as well, because there's so many of us. That's what I've learned. Like, there are so many of us, and they're all finding us now, which is so wonderful. And hopefully everyone one day will find everyone, but they're all saying, it is incredibly lonely. Like, for example, I speak to a lot of, within the girls and property community, a lot of single mums with children. That's tough. That's really, really tough. Especially when they're a single mum. And so they've got this huge responsibility in the children. They know they want to do more. They know they want to grow who they are. They're more than a mum. They are them as an individual, but not having that extra support network. And I really respect those women who are taking that step to make a better life for themselves and their children in the future. But what's really got them through and what's beautiful is that they all talk to each other within the Girls in Property community, and they all feel like they're not alone. There are other people who do this. And I kind of wish, it's why I built it in a way, to be honest with you. I wish I'd have had that when I first started, because it would have been, it'd have been really good. But I was very lucky. I mean, I say lucky, but it's not luck, is it? Because I almost don't like the word luck, because it wasn't luck. I went and seeked out another person or people to surround myself with. They didn't come to me. On the podcast, I'm talking about Sophie here, and on the podcast, she read out the message I sent to her, the Facebook message. She read it out, the first message I ever sent to Sophie. And my God, it's so embarrassing. And she reads it out all the time. And, it's so cringeworthy. And it's something like the usual, hi, my name's Athena. I saw you in YPM magazine. I think you're so inspirational. I live really near. I'm a girl trying to get into property. Would love to meet up with you for coffee. Like, it's really cringe. But I did it. I reached out and she responded, and that's what everyone should be doing. Everyone should be reaching out and trying to connect with other men and women in property.
Yeah, but that's why we think you're like the mindset queen, because you really have the discipline to be able to just put yourself out there and encourage other women, men to do the same. And it's so, so important.
So if you don't mind me just talking about that, because I think this is really interesting. So I tell you what, I went to an event recently. This was, I don't know, 3 months ago. And there was a really, in this industry, in this property industry, you get lots of different personalities. You get people who are great, really get it, both men and women, who want to encourage everybody and wants to uplift everybody. And then ever so often you get absolute arseholes in this industry. Like, you really do. And I'm just like, oh, really? Another one of you? Okay, fine. And this person came on stage. And
Carry on.
No, it's not that one. It's a different one.
It's a different one. We talked about a similar story. That's why.
No, it's a different one to what you think I'm about to say. It's a different one.
Oh, please tell.
And he came on in a really arrogant way, and he started off by almost jovially saying, he clapped his hands and he went, "Hey guys, I'm here to talk to you today about mindset." And he went, "Nah, just kidding. I'm not talking about any of that crap." And then went on to talk about his thing. And I was sat there going,
what's wrong with you?
What the hell? Like, that is such a stupid thing to say on stage to 400 people. Because I tell you this now, and I stand by this, and I would stand on that stage and argue with anyone who wants to come up against me on this, right? You cannot implement any strategy that you learn if you do not have that mindset to do it. And I'm telling you, you can go to a classroom on a 3-day classroom. I welcome you to do it, and spend your $2,500 with these property educations and go, right, I now understand no money down. I now understand service accommodation. I now understand this. Fine. You now understand the theory of it. So if you were to take an exam like a GCSE, you probably would get an A. Congratulations, you're fantastic. But actually, that isn't what the reality is. Sorry, I'm getting worked up. That actually isn't what the reality is. The reality is, okay, now go do it. Right? And I'm telling you, you cannot lie to yourself. You can't do it. Because if you're standing there on your own and you're going, right, now I've got to call these agents. Now I've got to go to the viewing. Now I've got to negotiate with the landlord. Now I've got to go up against the landlord who's a bit boisterous. And now I've got to answer all the questions that he's asking me or she's asking me. And you don't have that mindset that you're like in abundance. I can do this. I'm strong. I'm confident. I've got this. You won't be able to do it. You can't implement it. And it's a waste of money learning the strategies. And so many people now, in a wonderful way, are beginning to talk about mindset again. And it isn't something that you should skip. It's not something that you should laugh about. It's really, really important. And I know so many people at the moment who I'm coaching, and it's really funny because I almost thought that they were ready, and I thought that they had the right mindset to do it. And ever so often you're like, right, we got to go back again.
Yeah,
We
that's
got to
why
go back
it's
again.
so important, because we were saying before that Becky and I, like, we are like, we pump each other up, like we really pump each other up, and it's like you either
we were each other's own book club as well, endlessly reading personal development.
Have you read
books.
this one? Read this one. This one's great. And we were just constantly
proactive.
But if you don't surround yourself with a community of people who can do that and be that energy, that mindset energy for you, and you're just trying to learn, like you said, just the theory on its own, you're not going to get very far without a community or a mentor to be able to boost that and keep that momentum going.
And you know what, more than that, let me ask you girls a question. Like, let's say that, so you decided to do this together, which you have done. Let's say one of you was really like great energy, always positive, always forward thinking and wanting to do this, and the other person that you're doing this with is really negative, really like, oh, I don't know about this, and really pessimistic, and it's problems, but never solutions. How would that have affected your relationship, and how would that have affected you guys going forward in this and doing what you're doing now?
Well, plainly, we would not get very far. Anywhere. You have to have the right mindset to do any of it. And I do want to make this really, really plain and clear, at least for Ruth and I, when it comes to offering support for other people, we won't be able to help anyone unless that mindset is already there. But then
you can't convince anyone if they don't.
No,
you can't convince.
So it's like saying I've got friends or people that I know that are aware of what I do now, just because Ruth and I have made it a lot more obvious on the internet, and they'll come to me and be like, "So where do I get started?" Oh, and then immediately shut themselves down when I suggest like I have a very small piece of advice. They'll shut it down really, really quick, and I'm like, I already feel the weight of your lack of self-belief or lack of, it's like I need to see I need to see that you are willing to try and find a solution to a problem. And if your mind is you shut that down so quickly, then I know your mind is
not ready,
closed, and you're not ready. It's such a striking difference when someone has a good mindset to pursue something bigger.
And you can tell when someone is asking a question for like quick money compared to long-term wealth and gain, because a lot of people try and find like the easiest route, but in property it's all about the long term. The whole point, what we believe in property, is it's the long term of staying in it compared to just trying to make a buck.
So your mindset needs to be strong throughout, from the beginning and throughout the whole thing. Otherwise, it's just not going to.
Otherwise, just put money in your pension, get someone else to do it for you.
Yeah, totally. I completely agree. Yes, in essence. And also what's so important with that one is the fact that when, like, for example, a lot of people will say to me, you know, because I mentor on a one-to-one basis, which is a huge responsibility. And they're like, so what, like, why should I have a mentor? Like, what differentiates to having a mentor than going and doing like a 3-day course or learning from someone who's going to teach me about service accommodation HMOs? And it's like, well, I can teach you that. That bit's fine. That bit's, I do it with my eyes closed. The hardest bit is actually getting you, developing you as a person to grow over the next 6 months, because my mentoring is 6 months. And it's like, yeah, but who are you? Like, why are you doing this? What do you want out of this? And they're like, you know, and sometimes people will come to me and I always say, what do you want out of mentor? And the most beautiful answers are usually, I want someone to gain me my confidence, teach me along the way, and be my cheerleader. I'm like, yeah, I'm in. I've got you.
That's why we did it after we got our knowledge first.
Exactly. Whereas some people will just say to you, I want you to teach me about all the different strategies. It's like, yeah, but it's more than that.
Yeah,
it's like so much
like you
more.
said, you can just read that. You can read read it, but the mentorship is mainly for confidence building.
Do you find so when we did our education originally, we were like the only women that were our age group in the room, and it was very much based on like factual, here's this written on paper, yes, we'll get the knowledge in a few days, but because there was a lack of mindset and a lack of like support that especially women need, like women need other women to big each other up and succeed. We don't operate in like a sort of just logical way. We're more emotional and intuitive beings. We trust, like, we lead with our, we listen, well, we should be listening to our gut a lot more. I don't know about you, but do you find, because there was a lack of that at the beginning of this journey, of our property journeys, that we've now had to create this environment to be a platform for other women, for other people who need that kind of mindset and support to be able to pursue what they need to and get started.
Because I was going to just butt in there and say, like, the reason when we started, that encouraged us throughout our business career to hustle. Really, it was the cause of burnout for us to go, we've had enough.
Because there was a lack of mindset and a lack of emotional support or general well-being at the beginning. Do you feel like the beginning of the Girls in Property Pod, and what all the work that you do now
and what you stand for,
was that the reason you're doing what you do now? Or
so interesting one. So how this came about was, number one of the first times I ever went to a networking event. I remember my very, very first one. It was in Bournemouth. It was Progressive Property Network. And I walked in and there was, I don't ask me why I did this, but I did. Just me and my personality. I counted how many people were in the room. And it was 45 people were in that room. And 3 of them, including myself, were women out of 45. And what was happening was I remember it was my first one. I was very nervous because, you are when you first start out. And all these guys were in these clusters, like these groups and circles, and everyone was drinking and it was very, very boisterous. You know what I mean when I say that? And so I saw this other girl, and bless her, like, she must have freaked out seeing me, because I literally clinged to her like a koala, like clinging for dear life, going, please don't leave me.
We connect.
You're a female, I'm a female, like, stay with me. And I remember that, and I remember thinking, where are all the women? I remember thinking that. I was like, this is weird. Like, I knew it was male dominated, but I was like, this is insane, And actually the types of conversations that happen, not always, I don't want to discriminate, but sometimes what can happen is they make a lot of jokes that are just so inappropriate. And they're like, oh, I left the wife at home with the kids tonight. And it's like, oh, shut up. Like, it's so dated, it's not even charming. And I remember being in that environment and just thinking, this is odd. But nothing really came of that. It sort of just was something that was there, and it was just constant. But I tell you what, I remember being again at another event, and they were doing a deal clinic, and again, majority, like a sea of men, couple of women, and this girl bravely stood up and said, I've got a deal. I remember it. She was absolutely fantastic, and they started writing out this deal for her. And I remember it. By the way, this deal clinic took, like, she'd been working on this deal for some time, and they pulled it apart within the space of 4 minutes, like literally 4 minutes, as she's standing there, the poor thing. And then they were like, well, this is wrong, this is wrong, this is wrong. And then they were like, I remember this guy then said, of a show of hands, tell me who would do this deal. And like, nobody like put their hands up. And they were like, show me who wouldn't do this deal. And like, they all put their hands up. And she was just stood there, like, looking like an absolute, like,
savage.
And it was really, and I was like, this is not okay. Like, I don't like this. I don't like this education. This doesn't feel right. And I tell you, the conversations that now happen at the Girls in Property retreats and events and community and everything that I do, it fills my heart, girls. It really does, because the conversations we have are real, authentic conversations about how we feel as mothers, how we feel as women, how we feel within being represented, our thoughts to do with how we see money. Like, if you think about us women compared to men and how we see money, it's bizarre. Like,
also how we talk to each other as well.
How
like
we talk to each other.
We can be very direct, but there's a little bit more, I'd say, empathy with the way that you say words.
Yeah, completely. And
we don't need to cotton pad everything either. That's not what we're asking for. We're just asking to be communicated with and encouraged in a different way than just a militant sort of style.
Exactly.
Over logical and doesn't incorporate, like, the emotion's such a big part of it. Especially if you are a single mother, you've taken time away to be from your child, to be an event that is probably only accessible for maybe the 9-to-5 working guy who can step away from the family that much easier. and it's just and once she's there, she's communicated with in a way that is totally void of emotion or even belittles her when she gets there.
How is that encouraging? Especially when you've got young kids, and generally young kids are very mummified, like they want their mummy, and if you're having to be everything, the mum and the dad for that child, and then you go to an event where you go, oh, I'm gonna do something new for us, and then that gets crushed, like how are you going to continue to try and, like, you need more than just only willpower, you need the support of people around you.
Well, exactly. And there was a huge gap for this. So I think the only other women who were doing this at the time, and I think still now actually, was in New Zealand. There was and there's girls that invest. I think they're Kiwis, I think.
Them. Yeah.
Are they Kiwi? I think they're Kiwi.
Yeah, they're Kiwi.
Yeah, they're amazing. I love them. And so I was like, right, there needs to be a space for girls in property. There really does. And bringing these women together. And then obviously we did the retreat and then another one and that type of thing. And actually I can tell you now, because it's officially been announced. Well, it's not been announced yet, but it will be announced by the time this podcast comes out. And I received it literally Friday, just gone. I officially now have received the trademark for Girls in Property.
Yay!
Yeah, it happened on Friday night. Literally just gone.
What milestone you've got to celebrate.
I will celebrate. And there are some really, really cool announcements that are going to come as a result of this, basically, for Girls in Property. And my sole mission now is to get this out across the UK. Like, we need to start creating accessible areas for women to feel that they can go to various events and feel seen in that moment, and talk about anything they want to talk about and not feel judged, not feel anything like that. So I feel like, I don't know if you girls have this, when you just know in your heart something is pulling you, like a universe is like pulling you towards like something that you're meant to do in life. Like, I feel I'm meant to have this voice to represent, like, or not even my voice. I'm here to give the platform to give other women their voice to talk about what it is they want to talk about. And that's what I'm really excited for, and where my new passion is. Yes, fine property. Yes, fine planning. Fine. Passive, yes, whatever. But actually, what really means something to me is trying to support other women in their own dreams and aspirations. That's what gets me up in the morning,
Yeah, well, this is what we love, what you do, and that's why we think that you are the mindsets queen. You are the queen of helping other queens.
Queen supporting queens.
Queen system,
yeah. I love that, and just lifting one another up. I very much come from a world where I always talk about collaboration, not competition. Because why are we competing? We have so many other people to compete with. I don't need to compete with you ladies or anyone else. I'm like, let's all join forces. Let's all build together. And what's really exciting,
and business is all about collaboration.
Well, and this leads into kind of what's happening for Girls in Property and the exciting announcements, because I'm kind of building a bit of an army of women. So it's really exciting, and I've already got those who know are already kind of a bit on board, and it's really exciting. It's really, really exciting, and we're gonna just take over effectively, and the men have not got a clue what's
amazing.
Coming.
I think it's beautiful, it's amazing, and it's so needed. And women make great investors statistically, and
long-term investors as well.
And we collaborate, we make sisterhood so much more naturally as well, and lift each other up so much more naturally. It's just, I feel like this is such I keep saying natural, but a very natural way to exist as a woman in the investor world. And you've created a beautiful space, and we're working to create a space and work together just to build up more women as property investors in a really honest way. Because I think just going back to burnout at the beginning, where I'm sure all three of us are just exhausted from how we've thought we used to have to operate before. And it's just Saturn returns, and we're all learning now that it doesn't need to be that way just because it was modeled to us before, because the only role models back in the day were that. So I'm glad that we're now sort of paving a way to show where, what we're doing this all for. We're doing this for family, for well-being, for life, like more life, not just hustling all life long.
Or competition.
Or being in competition with each other. I'm not the kind of person to go on Instagram and be like, I did a cold bath at 4 a.m. and then went on a 6-mile run, and then I started work and I didn't see my family all day
on my period as well.
I'm tired of having that. Well, I think we're all tired of having that role model and having been that person before, and now I'm just glad we're saying that you don't have to be that way.
Could you share as well a little bit about your experience, because I know we were talking about it before we put the podcast on, but just your experience with all of that and burnout?
Yeah, I'm so glad that you guys brought this up, and as you know, that's what I love about this podcast. It's called the Honest Property Sisters and things, and I love that about you too. So effectively, I got caught in this web really, really quickly. And actually, if you listen to the Girls in Property podcast, I actually do an episode with my partner Steve for about an hour and 45 minutes about what it's like to live behind the scenes of my world. So if you actually want to get the full detail, listen to that, because basically it's like therapy that me and Steve,
we'll put that down in the link below.
We literally just have like a therapy session. And what ends up happening is you can lose yourself within all of this, because what happens is this is what happens. Okay, that you can't go back to the life that you once had because it either wasn't working, you were unhappy, and therefore you're like, right, I need to do something new. And what you have to do is you have to do something new where you have to learn about how to do it and make money at the same time. And it consumes your life. It really does. And you can't feel like, this is the wrong words to use, but this is literally what happens. You can't feel like you can fail because people are watching you and you're watching yourself and you're like, well, I can't fail, so therefore I can't take a moment away from my business or the screen, because if I take my eyes away from the screen or the business for a second and then the business fails, it's my fault. Because I gave myself 10 minutes away from the business. Therefore, the business is going to fail, so it's my fault. And you start having this psychology that goes around in your head all the time. And I talk about this a lot, which is I literally, for the 2 years of my business, sacrificed myself in so many ways. I became really sick. I just lost myself. And I tell you what's really interesting, if we actually want to have an honest conversation, right? Yeah, I remember looking at some Instagram posts that I did early on. And I can tell you the Instagram posts that I'm smiling in, looking happy in, and behind that it's just misery. I can tell you those posts, because that's the reality. And it's like, well, it's a really hard conundrum, girls, and I'm sure that you've got your own opinion on this, because I have this conversation with others, and the conversation I have with them is, I don't know if I would have got as far as I have done within the businesses if I didn't sacrifice myself early on to do it, so that now I can take my foot off the pedal a little bit. Whereas if I hadn't have put my foot down so hard, would I have got to where I am today? And it's a really hard balance. And I don't even know if I've got all of the solutions for everyone. But what I would say is this, right? You might be thinking to yourself, because I thought this at the beginning when I was looking at how other people do business, and when you hear Dragon's Den and other people, and you feel like you've got to be working day and night, and it's like, yes, it's 11 o'clock at night and I'm working and aren't I amazing, and oh look, I haven't even got time to eat my food because I'm working so hard, I'm the queen of business.
It's a badge of honor, isn't it?
It's a badge of honor, and it's absolute bullshit, because you then just get really, really unfit, like unwell.
But
and then
also in the beginning, you don't have the money to be able to outsource everything at that point.
Don't.
So you have to be all hats, and people don't understand that.
So I spoke about this with Sophie. It's effectively about 180 hats that you wear, because you're everything to your business. Like it will take every part of your soul. And you know what? It doesn't have to be that way. Like, I think that what I try and teach people now when I mentor people is, I actually talk to them about the planning their weeks and planning what it looks like. And I always say to them, where's your self-care bit? Where's your self-care? And I always say that to them now. And I know that that's very hypocritical of me because I didn't do it, but I'm trying to save them.
But
because
exactly, but you're teaching what you learned from your experience.
Yeah, you can only do that. You can, learn from my mistakes. It's like what parents say. They're like, don't do what I did. But it's a hard one because, quite frankly, everyone knows that when you start out, there are more outgoings than ingoings, and that's panic stations. You need to start generating income. You're learning as you're doing, so that's really hard. You've got to prove other people wrong who think that you can't do it, and you feel like you've got to prove them wrong. You're comparing yourself every single moment of the day on social media to other people who apparently are bossing life and doing X amount of deals, whatever. And you sort of get trapped. You get trapped in this psychological web that happens. And even on the podcast that I do with Steve, we talk about it in a really factual term, which is we talk about prioritization and where we sit on the priorities list. And Steve says on the podcast, and he's 100% correct, he's like, your business was the top of your priority. Then it was, and obviously there's other stuff, but let's just go with the basics. So business was at the top. Then I'd go with Steve quite far down below that, and then me at the bottom of that, But when I'm like, if you can see on the camera, like I'm talking like business was up here, Steve was like, you have to wait until like I have like 5 minutes for you, And then I was below that. There wasn't even 5 minutes for me. And so you just collapse at the end of the day because you're so exhausted, and then you got to go again. And then not only that, girls, but you then have to put content out to be like, this is actually what I'm doing. So I haven't even got time for myself. But I tell you what, I don't have time for myself, but I have time for all my followers to make sure that my followers know what I'm doing, even though I don't even know what I'm doing. And we're just going to go with that cycle. And it's a real psychological battle of where it is. And now people always say to me, they're like, well, how did that end? How did you come out of that? How did you realize that was happening? And the answer to that question is you've got to have the right people around you. You really do, who say to you, this is so unhealthy. What you are doing, this is not sustainable. And my thing now is my title is the property lifestyle creator and building sustainable wealth. That's what I represent.
Saying before as well, that it's a season, not a lifestyle, to be hustling. Work hard at the beginning, because like we're not going to pretend that you don't have to. You have to put a lot of your time and effort in the beginning, but it doesn't have to be ongoing. And we will put in the link below, the bio below, that 2 of the best books we ever read that made us change our mindset was it Entrepreneur's Guide to Keeping Your Shit Together.
Love that.
And one that really helped us to really understand systemizing, so that the priority is that you can take even a month off work and know that everything's going to be fine, is Clockwork.
Run your business like Clockwork. Run your business like Clockwork. I'll put the link down, but it really, oh my god!
Oh, you got to read it.
I read it and I was, when you read a book and you're like, oh my god.
Well,
one of those.
I'm off to California on Monday for a week, so I need some reading material and things. So
send me
the link, and I will listen. I will buy that 100%.
1,000,000%, because we realized when we made our first business, and
we
then
loved
even
it.
our property
We loved
business,
it.
even as much as you enjoy what you're doing, it we couldn't step away from it. We just couldn't. And it's like, what are we doing this all for? I used to have to go on holiday and realize that I couldn't. I still was looking at my phone or dealing with tenants or putting out some other fire. And it was, how are you supposed to ever relax and be present?
Or move on to the next, progress. If you are continuously only being the heads of everything, even though there was 2 of us, we needed to make a change to move on to the next part of our business. And you're not going to be able to do that if you are being the head of everything. Basically. And
I also want to say that, even though I know that we've both said to each other that we've had very tiring or very burdensome days, that you're not going to be perfect. Like, even though we're aware of all these things that we need to do, I experienced a little bit of burnout yesterday. I was just flat out on the sofa. I remember the other podcast that we did with you, you said you actually postponed your massage.
I did. Do you know, I was thinking about booking in a massage for this week before I go away. I tell you what I have got booked in for this week, because obviously I'm off to California. I've got an eyelash appointment, already paid for it, so that ain't going nowhere. I've got a wax appointment, so that ain't going nowhere because I need that. So yeah, I've got some self-care going on this week, which is really exciting.
Oh, good. So, but that's the thing I wanted to make clear. Like, even though we know we're supposed to, once you've hustled so hard at the beginning, it's hard to take a step back.
Have awareness of it, isn't it?
And I think there's tricks to it, like you saying putting a deposit down on whatever the self-care thing it is that you need to do. That's one way.
Yeah, exactly. And just go, it could be as simple as going for like a 10-minute walk, 20-minute walk. Like, just get up and move. It's so unhealthy to be sat behind a desk. And listen, it's not okay. As entrepreneurs, if you decide to go down this journey, doesn't even matter about property. I'm talking about just entrepreneurship. It isn't the easy road. Like it really isn't. But I tell you what, it's the most rewarding one, because all of the hard work that you do, and it is hard work, make no mistake, this is not a walk in the park. It is to build your dreams and your future. And that's so important to say. Instead of working hard for someone else, work hard for yourself, because then one day you can reap from all the rewards and go for it. And just surround yourself with other people who get yourself accountability partners as well. I would say that always helps. People who are going through it at the same. Surround yourself with people who are maybe a little bit ahead of you, so you can maybe be inspired by them and what they're doing. And just get into good groups of communities as well. And really think about what it is you want to do. I mean, we haven't even touched on the whole subject of rent to rent and the realities of that and everything.
But touching on that, actually, let's go on to that.
Oh, no, we're coming up.
We are. I
was like, how much time have we got?
Yeah, let's do that in another episode. But just to wrap up, based on what you've just said, what do you want to share? What sort of offerings you have for people to help them on their journeys?
Yeah, definitely. So I effectively have two separate like businesses, if you like, two different entities. So if you are a female in the property industry and you're a woman in property and you want to be part of a great community, or you want to listen to a podcast specifically for women in property as well, and come to events specifically for women, then come over to my Instagram page, which is Girls in Property, and come and learn all about it. So the community is now got just shy of 70 members in that community, which is amazing.
That's amazing.
We meet on the first Tuesday of every month on something called Girls in Prosperity. So I always like to take a bigger view of you as a person when you're looking at property developing. So, for example, I get guest experts to come in and talk about energy and time management, systemization, marketing. I've got someone coming in to do breath work. It's all about the holistic approach almost.
I've
also, and then I've got my, and there's also, it's a platform that's built on Circle. So we've got loads of questions that get posed in there, and then the girls all help each other within it. We had lease questions the other day. We had what's it called? Exchange with delayed completion questions. We've had rent to rent questions. We've had all sorts, and everyone's just helping each other out, which is great. Then I've also got my event. So I did the April retreat just gone, and there will be another one next year. But the most upcoming event will be on Saturday, the 7th of December, which is the Girls in Property Christmas Gala. So if you do want to come along, just DM me the word gala and I'll send you all the links. That's no problem. So that's kind of for Girls in Property, which is amazing. And there will be some really amazing stuff coming to hopefully a city near you soon. So stay tuned for that one, how you can get involved. And then separately to that, as I said, I've got my other brand, which is I am known as the Property Lifestyle Creator. Now that's for everyone, that's for men and women to effectively catapult themselves in a sustainable way within property. So I have a couple of different ways you can get in contact with me. So the first one is I actually have made a free sort of property module all around mindset, because I believe that everybody should be able to have that. So it's completely free of charge. If you DM me the word mindset, I'll just ping you over the link, no cost whatsoever, and get yourself started today. On the other hand, if you wanted to, I do also have a 7-step program, which is literally how to become the how to accelerate your journey into the property market. And it specifically touches on mapping out your goals, mindset, the methods of HMO, service accommodation, buy-to-lets, rent-to-rent, money in terms of how to raise finance, how to multiply, how to get the right power team. It's absolutely massive. I give all the contracts, analyzers, everything in there. So let me know if you want to get your hands on that one. And then finally, I also offer one-to-one mentoring, as I just said. So if you want any of that, there should be like a link. So just send me a message and just say that you want to book in a 30-minute free call with me, and we can talk about how we can work together going forward. And that's all through my Instagram page, which is Athena_official. So yeah,
we'll put the link below.
Amazing. So
you do it all
so much. I don't know how you do it all. But I think we'll put all of Athena's links down below, so it's all easy for you to find. And if you are looking to get started on your buy-to-let journey, Ruth and I do have a beginner's roadmap available, which is quite detailed and descriptive, and it's a 2.5 week course
that's self-paced and online, with a community at the end of it as well, with option to have mentorship.
Yes, and we're all collaborating and just creating the perfect environment for you to thrive, between all of the ladies who are bringing what we are bringing to the world and supporting you in your journey. So, yay! Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. I'm so glad we got to have you on our podcast.
Yeah. I've loved it, girls. Thank you so much for having me as well.
If you would like a follow-up podcast with Athena, let us know as well, because we were going to talk about rent to rent. So that, if there's enough people who say they'd be interested in hearing about that, then we can talk about that in the next one. But yeah, thank you so much, Athena.
Thank you.
Thanks, ladies. Bye.
Bye. Bye.